All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar. It's 2 in the afternoon, Eastern time here. I'm Omar Taba, VP of Products and Solutions at BrainBox. And I'm joined by Andy McMahon, who's our Channel Sales Director.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Andy.
Hello, Omar.
Hello.
Nice to virtually see you.
Exactly. Good to connect with you again. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, for taking the time. We're going to jump right in. We're going to have I'm sure, some questions, and we've reserved some time for a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. Please use the Q&A button in your toolbar to pose the questions, and we'll get to them kind of in the order that we receive them. So with that, we're going to get going. So let's start with a little bit of a background about BrainBox AI. We are a Canadian company. We're based in Montreal, Canada, founded in 2017. So we're about 3.5 years old. We spent the first 2.5 years of our existence in research and development mode. And we launched our offering to the market in May of 2019, so about a year ago. And since that time, we're installed in over, actually this needs updating, I would say 22 million square feet. And we're in 15 different cities worldwide. We have installations in Australia, Canada, the US, Europe, Thailand, Ireland, and so on. Many different types of buildings. We're also, another thing that makes us unique is that we do quite a bit of research with universities and other types of third parties, and we publish our research. So if you look us up online, you're likely to come across some of those academic papers. And we're a rapidly growing company. So we're over 60, 65, if I'm not mistaken, professionals on the team right now. And growing fast, so please take a look at our job postings for any opportunities that might be open. And in terms of the challenges that we're trying to solve, I think a lot of the folks on this call are probably familiar with this type of information, but it's worth going over just so that we're all on the same page. So HVAC systems in commercial buildings usually consume about 45% of the building's energy consumption. And roughly 30% of that energy consumption is wasted. So there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. And a lot of the measures that exist on the market for improving energy efficiency are, while effective, they're time-consuming and costly. They're usually big CapEx projects that are, again, big retrofits and so on. And last but not least, poor HVAC operation leads to, obviously, things that we all want to avoid. So higher levels of complaints, lower productivity from the tenants, and so on. So what BrainBox's contribution to the space is, and what makes us unique, is that we convert an existing HVAC system into an autonomous system using AI and cloud computing. So what does it mean when we say autonomous? It means a system that is able to observe, learn, and then act independently, to make decisions independently. How do we do that? Right? So this slide here gives a good overview of this. So firstly, we use advanced deep learning AI models. We're lucky that we're based in Montreal, which is one of the global hubs of AI research. And so we have access to professionals on our team that we were able to source from local universities that are experts in this domain. What we do is we plug into a building's existing BMS system, and we ingest the data into our cloud platform. So this BMS data, as a lot of the folks on the call know, can be anything from temperature, pressure, humidity, and also fan command, valve positions, and so on. And we marry that BMS data with weather data. So the AI, think of the AI as a junior engineer that just finished college and has been deployed to this building, doesn't know anything about this building. So we're feeding this new sort of blank AI model with data about the outside world, so the weather, coming from the closest weather station to this building, and BMS data coming from the BMS system and the sensors and actuators inside the building. So the AI starts to make an association between what's happening outside and what's happening inside. So for example, if it's hot and humid outside, this conference room will get hotter quickly. This other one that's in the back, not facing the sun in the morning, has a different type of thermal gradient or reaction. These are the types of things that the AI is learning. So the first phase of our deployment, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, is just learning. So that is a few weeks where the AI is forming its model. And once the AI has learned, it's able to actually predict what the building is going to do in a couple of hours. So ahead of time, based on the weather forecast for today, the AI knows, well, this room is going to do this and this zone is going to do that. And that's when the AI is ready to actually control. So it can actually go into autonomous mode and write back to the HVAC system in the building in order to optimize it. And this happens kind of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, autonomously, and doesn't require human intervention. The loop that we use to illustrate that process that we just walked through is here on the screen. So the AI has learned, based on the data, how the building behaves, so it's able to predict. So for example, I predict that this conference room is going to be at 80 degrees in a couple of hours. My set point is 72 Fahrenheit. So clearly the prediction is that it's going to be hot. It's going to be warmer than my set point, so I can act. I don't need to wait until it happens. But if my prediction is 72 and my set point is 72, then clearly there's nothing to be done. So I can just go back into waiting mode and wait another 5 minutes. That's our typical cycle time. And predict again every 5 minutes. And so it's this type of iterative, continuous optimization that our system provides for every zone in the building. And the results. So why do we do what we do? So the first kind of and the primary driver for adoption has been the energy savings. So we're seeing 20 to 25% reduction in the total energy consumption of the building. That's gas and electric. Clearly, we see more gas savings in the winter and more electric savings in the summer. But those are the figures that we're delivering to our customers. We also see an associated 20 to 40% reduction in CO2 emissions. And equally important, and sometimes more importantly, we see a 60% improvement in occupant comfort. And the way we measure that is by measuring the time each zone spends at the set point within the dead band. So 60% improvement over what it was doing prior to BrainBox's installation. And last but not least, our physical installation is 2 to 3 hours maximum. We have a small gateway that gets installed in the building, and it can be done in 45 minutes. So it's a very light touch, and it's completely reversible. So here's a slide that recaps the process that we outlined. So whenever a customer wants to connect to our platform, what we do is we connect to the BMS. We can connect using a site gateway. We can connect using drivers like Tritium Niagara, AX, and N4 drivers that we have. And we can also connect using a cloud-to-cloud integration or API pathway if that's available. So we've done all three. It just depends on the situation and what's easiest for the implementation. We then ingest the data and go into our learning mode. So here we're in read-only mode. We're not writing back to the building. And we are, again, feeding the AI with the BMS data and the weather data. And this learning period depends on how big the building is, essentially how much data is coming through. So for a small building, could be a few days. For a big building, could be 6 to 8 weeks, as we see on the screen. In step 3, after the AI has learned, we're able now to control the building. So we notify the building manager or owner, the decision maker, that we're ready to go into autonomous mode. And when we get the green light, that's what we do. We put it into autonomous mode. At this point, the AI is actively monitoring and then sometimes optimizing the building depending on the situation. And last but not least, our system continues to improve. It never stops learning. So if the weather changes, if the occupancy pattern changes, all of this will be picked up by the AI. At this point, we've been in the market for a little while, and we want to focus on or clarify what BrainBox AI is, and on the next slide, what we are not. So maybe to help folks on the call understand where we fit in the broader market. So we're a SaaS, software as a service offering that generates positive cash flow. So it's very important for the market and folks to understand that what we are selling is essentially money that's locked in hot and cold air. Number two is we're an AI deep learning based building optimization system. Thirdly, it's autonomous and closed loop. So it's not a list of recommendations. It's not something that somebody else has to go and implement. It's a closed loop system that will act 24/7. And we're improving, as we discussed, energy efficiency, comfort, and sustainability.
And hey, Omar, if I can jump in, I
absolutely.
Think just to highlight that number 3 bullet, the autonomous closed loop system. Yep. AI never sleeps, never blinks, runs 24/7. That's the way it's built, to do what it does. But the closed loop part of it, I think, is an important designation because especially a lot of the folks that are on the call, you've dealt with over the past, 8 to 10 to 12 years, dashboards and reporting tools and FDD tools, and 99% of those are passive, static tools, right? Useful in their own right. They give you really good, poignant information about your system, but they don't close that loop, meaning they don't write back, certainly not autonomously. And the reliance is on you, the reseller, the SI, the partner, to make sure that that gets done for your client. So I wanted to just jump in there and add some color there, Omar. I think that's an important one for the guys on the call.
Absolutely, and thanks for pointing that out, Andy. It's a question that we get a lot, in terms of differentiation. We're actually going to address it on the next slide as well. But yeah, it's a closed loop system that identifies the opportunity for efficiencies and then executes them, right, 24/7. And then, near and dear to our hearts as well is not just the technical innovation that we were talking about with BrainBox so far, but also I feel there's a commercial innovation as well. Is we're not some big CapEx project, right? You don't have to go through a budgeting cycle and get CFO's approval and so on. We're a software as a service, and it's a service that delivers value props A, B, and C. And the adoption, therefore, really is based on what is the benefit to the customer. And we also have built in a free trial period. So no risk, no questions asked. It's a free trial period where the customer gets to see the system in action and then make a decision on whether to continue or not. So we are very much a proof in the pudding type of company, and we give that power and that decision-making ability to the customers so that they feel empowered, right? They participate in the decision and they feel that they can manage their risk. Equally important is kind of to take a moment to talk about what BrainBox AI isn't. So we're not a BMS system. Like we've discussed before, we connect or integrate with BMS systems in order to optimize the building's energy efficiency. Our partners are the companies that we work with every day, are BMS system integrators, BMS system manufacturers. So we very much are a part of that ecosystem and are not a replacement for it. We're also not a fault detection and diagnostic system, so an FDD type system. While, again, those are important and valuable, it's not something that we are focused on. And like Andy said, we're not a dashboard that is making a list of recommendations that somebody else has to go and implement. Our system is a closed loop system that will go ahead and do what it needs to do. And last but not least, we're not an ESCO. We're not delivering a guaranteed savings offering. There are ESCOs that do a great job of that, and we would encourage folks that are interested in that to go and and see what's on the market. From our perspective, our customers are saying, well, how do I know you're going to deliver the value that you're touting on the market? And our answer is, well, you have the control, Mr. Customer. If you'd like to disconnect the service, go right ahead. So there's no, by virtue of giving control to the customer, they have the ability to mitigate their risk. And so if we're not delivering value, then they can simply cancel the service. Thankfully, that hasn't happened. And here are some examples. And actually, maybe I'll spend a second on the second one because it relates to the point we just talked about related to canceling and so on. So these are three examples of savings in real buildings. So the first one is a commercial office building, multi-tenant, 140,000 square feet, about 17 stories. And we're saving them 21% on about $350,000 of annual energy spend. The second one is a hotel. It's a Holiday Inn, actually, and this owner went on the record talking about their experience with us and the savings that they're experiencing, and were interviewed by the Wall Street Journal in a recent article about BrainBox. But what's interesting here is, and it relates to what we were talking about just now, is there early on in the engagement, there was a kind of a mix-up, and one of the maintenance providers for the hotel, sort of by accident or by mistake, blamed BrainBox for some issues that were happening on site, mechanical issues. So we had been installed for about 4 or 5 months, and we were saving a lot. We were saving, as you can see, something like north of 30%. So the owner calls and says, we'd like you to disconnect the service. So we were taken aback. Why is this happening? We're delivering really good results. He said, no, please disconnect. So we said, okay. So we put the AI into monitoring mode, and 3 months later, we get another phone call from the owner saying, hey, we'd like you to reconnect your service. And when we asked why, he said, well, because my bill jumped back up. And so sure enough, we looked through the bills, and the bill had jumped back up. And when we reconnected our service again, went back down. So this is a great example of how BrainBox is delivering dynamic value, right? It's a dynamic problem. Buildings need constant optimization in order to reduce their energy consumption. And therefore, this is a service that merits recurring revenue. And last but not least, just to illustrate the point that we can do small buildings as well as large. So these are two small box, medium box retail, about 10,000 square feet each. They're rooftop unit type systems, and we're able to deliver good value here as well in the 19–20% range. Now, we talked about connecting to the building. We talked about the learning and then the autonomous mode. What happens after? So all of the buildings that we're connected to are actually being monitored by our monitoring team. So we have a monitoring team, a NOC, in our office in Montreal that's manned by professional HVAC and building engineers. So this is not a call center service or a third party. These are our own folks. And what they're looking for three main buckets of issues. One is connectivity issues. So, gateway down, system down, cellular link down. The other bucket of issues they're looking for is comfort. So, too high, too low in terms of temperature. And then last but not least, they're looking at maintenance or operational related alarms, like a damper being stuck open or a sensor being out of range. And the reason we're doing all of this is to make sure that we're able to deliver our service in the way and in the quality with which we'd like to deliver it to our customers. So it's common for, and here you see some examples of visualization tools that we're using in-house. It's common for us to spot something and call the customer or the building operator or the system integrator, depending on the desired kind of workflow, to give them a heads up. Say, hey, for example, a real one that I've seen recently, which is we sent a notice to a customer or to their contractor rather that 6 sensors were reporting an out of range value. So these sensors need to be replaced or looked at. And in terms of the ideal buildings that we connect to, in terms of building types, office towers, universities, K through 12, malls, retail, we've done kind of all of the above. And it's basically, it relies on having a BMS in place. So typically we integrate using BACnet or Modbus. I mentioned we also have the Tritium AX and N4 drivers. And then we also do cloud-to-cloud integration if that's available. We're also looking for 75% at least of the building to be centralized or controlled by the BMS. And we're agnostic to the control system. So we've worked with all the major brands in the market in terms of manufacturers. And we're also agnostic to the equipment type. So air handler VAV, fan coil, central plant chillers, boilers, etc. Last but not least, in terms of building size, we prefer, while again, we can do small box retail, like we just mentioned, we prefer to go after a kind of a lower hanging fruit when it comes to single individual buildings that are of at least 75,000 square feet. That being said, if there's a portfolio of small buildings that in aggregate make a good potential customer, then definitely we're interested. In terms of systems that we've connected to in the past and more, this is not an exhaustive list, but you can see here, all the major brands in the market. So with that, I'll pause and I'll hand it over to Andy. And here, let me give you control.
Yep, thank you.
Away we go.
Yeah, thanks, Omar. And hopefully you guys are all still with us. Omar is very informative, lots of information there for you guys. Just for some housekeeping, I know we're going to make this recording available at some time in the future, and you guys will get a link to view this again if you need to. So how to become a reseller, and I should start with our philosophy first. This is my bailiwick at BrainBox. I've done this historically in HVAC industry. And also prior to that in the industrial automation side of the market. So I've been, it's near and dear to my heart, building channels and building those relationships. So I take the same philosophy we do as a company that I have in the past, which is we want to empower our partners, meaning the resellers we bring on, we want to help you sell so that we're both successful in this endeavor. And in doing that, the overarching philosophy is we're going to go for coverage, meaning geographically covered territories. No need for us to double up on territory resellers if we have coverage and those resellers partners are bringing business, for that requisite market. So certainly over time, we'll look for developing business plans, deepening our relationship, understanding how deep and wide you go in your different markets. But the overarching philosophy for us is not, let's get as many resellers as we can. It's never going to be like that. This is a specialized product. We want this to be a revenue generating product for you guys. And we also want you to understand that you're partners of ours. We're not just throwing this out in the market and seeing what happens. We're taking our time. And just as an example to that, it's during this COVID-19 pandemic period. It's essentially the length of time I've been with the company. I've talked to in the hundreds of potential partners, and we've only brought on maybe a couple dozen so far that we think are worthy partners that we can spend our time with, and they believe this product is a product for them to take to market with their clients. So that said, let me just let's see if I click here on the next slide. Okay, here we go. So process-wise, we have an initial call. After this, if there's interest, certainly you'll reach out to me or we'll reach out to you and we'll connect for an initial overview of the solution with our team and your teams. Make sure there's a fit for both of us, and then if there is, assuming there is, in parallel, we will both watch progress on our reseller agreement. You guys will have to review that. Red line issues, if you have any with our contract. And in parallel, we're going to build an initial kind of small business plan, of some targets that you think would be great in your markets, clients that hopefully, possibly you already have, and that we can target together and start building a business case for the initial engagement model. Omar hinted to this earlier in the conversation that we have a free trial. So, and I'll talk about it in a couple of slides here, but the initial engagement model is an important, very enticing one. We think it's a really big deal for new partners and bringing on partners, and you taking this message to the market. We're very honest with ourselves. This is a new technology, quite disruptive, but also a new conversation to have with your clients. So in that light, we want to help you do that. We want to help you identify good initial targets. And then we also think that our initial engagement is enticing enough to where for your clients, it's almost irresistible to say no to, it's a no risk, all reward initial install. And you'll see a couple slides on that. But I want to cover that, in parallel, we'll be talking about the agreement, assuming we're both, on the same page as far as we want to be partners. We'll be running through the agreement and kind of an initial business plan as a first step. On those initial sites, we're moving forward. We're running through, the agreement. We're getting close to, signing off on the agreement. We're also doing pricing proposals and quotes, and we actually have a building survey that we'll send out to you, and you'll get us the requisite information that I provide to our onboarding team. And then in concert, we all determine, is this a good site for us to install on? Is all the information supplied from the building survey, et cetera. So this is the simple but exciting time, of getting started and looking at the targets and building the business plan and sort of everybody shaking hands and moving forward, or, bumping elbows or whatever the requisite version of that is now. So just real quick, an example of this initial engagement model, and then also giving you an idea of a small to average size building. This should be obvious for a lot of you guys on the call. A 200,000 square foot building, using $2 per square foot for energy. Average spend on that building is $400,000 annually. BrainBox savings come in around 25%, so $100,000 in this example. And then the annual cost for applying the BrainBox license to that property, including the gateway, driver, onboarding time, that type of labor from our team and our onboarding side, comes to that amount you see on the screen there. They're around 35,000. Net savings being, in $80,000 range. And that same example broken out in kind of a table form, showing you the initial period, the no risk, all reward 2-month period, and then the pulling the trigger on the SaaS model agreement. So you'll see the month 1 and 2 are the learning period. So like Omar said, smaller buildings will be shorter. They might fall into the 1-month period instead of 2 for training and learning. Some bigger buildings fall into the 8-week period. So assuming 2 months in this example, months 3 and 4 are actually we're letting the system run. It's no cost to you, no cost to your clients, no risk to either side either. At the end of month 4 is where the decision is made. We love this. We want to move forward. We're starting the 12-month SaaS agreement. We start invoicing back at that point. And you can see, just with the dollars and savings there, months 3 and 4 in the table, we're just putting cash in their pocket, your client's pockets. Month 5, if you look at that, the cost of the system in that month is $2,500 MSRP. The net savings, as you can see, is higher than that. So this is a cash flow positive experience from day one. Obviously, the 2 months of money in your pocket, but even with the months that they're actually paying the fee, they're seeing cash flow positive from those months moving forward. So again, this is the model that we've seen some good success with, especially with new partners that we're bringing on. Very enticing, should be irresistible to your clients. And that's, you know, where we need you guys in this equation primarily is that client relationship that you have. I think when you start digging into this, and we believe very strongly in this, that you'll see it the way we do, that this is a tool to have in, you know, an arrow to have in your quiver to apply to your existing systems, whether or not you have a recurring revenue model now, whether or not you do a service. This is an additional revenue stream for you guys. And we're excited about bringing this to you, but we believe once you dig in, you'll see it the same way we do, and that this is something you'll want to bring to all of your clients. As far as once you're on as a partner, and this is a great, I've come on to the company in, I would say, early stage mode, right? We're no longer a startup, but we're still early stage because we're bringing on partners like you, and our go-to-market strategy is through partners, right? We want this to be successful. We need this to be successful for that hyper growth mode that we need to move into now. And you know, that's why we're doing these presentations. That's why we're trying to get the message out to the reseller SI community, because we know we only get there with you guys and your support. So we've already built this portal for partners. It's got lots of information, support material, marketing, brochures, white papers, all of our presentations. You also have all your information on there specifically. Our marketing team, full crackerjack marketing team, I love them. They actually offer co-branding opportunities if you guys want your logo on our brochures, etc. Whenever we get back into actually doing media, you know, in person, then, you know, we'll support you in local shows and even regional shows, nationwide shows, whatever. But until then, you know, we can support you on social media posts, press releases, and things like that. So there's a lot of support as far as technical support, training. I should mention that we have all of our training videos on this portal as well. You can kind of see that in the screenshot below, those little subtitles, co-branding training, you know, our documentation. All of this is there for you guys. Whatever's not here, whatever's missing, we're probably working on it, but, you know, we are not invisible to you. If you have feedback, if you want to make suggestions, we're pretty nimble. So we do a lot of things ongoing, you know, with your help and with your support as well. So we do have this website already put together. When you sign on as a partner, you'll get a welcome letter that invites you to this secure server, and then you can get to this data. So I did talk about the initial engagement process. Your responsibilities in this, your role in this is primarily the client relationships. Once we get past the pre-install materials, meaning you guys have to give us all the information on the buildings, which likely you already have. So it's not a difficult document for you guys to fill out. Once that gets over to our team, we're either sending you the gateway, or we're getting the Tritium driver, or we're getting a way for you to get the data from that building into our cloud. Installation period, like Omar pointed out, if it's the driver, it's almost instantaneous. If it's the gateway, it's just, you know, an hour or so of configuring, you know, installing on a wall, configuring some IP addresses. And then, quite frankly, your job is done, with the exception of you're managing the relationship with the client, which is a big deal. That's why we need you. And then also, as we're onboarding the data from the building, we may have questions from our onboarding team to yours of, we're not sure what this controller is because it's named, you know, a funny name, or we're not sure what this point is, so you need to help us figure that out. But virtually your work is done when the box or the driver gets installed and we've begun to onboard the building. And then it's your responsibility to, you know, obviously interface with the client, keep them in lockstep with or in concert with what we're doing, and we'll do the same with you so that we all work together to have a successful implementation. So that's kind of the broad steps of becoming a partner, our support behind that, and our philosophy of bringing the product to market. Happy to pass it over to Omar if you have anything you want to add, or we can jump into the Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, just would encourage, thank you, Andy, first of all, for the great overview. And just to the folks on the phone, just want to emphasize what Andy said earlier, that this is a new revenue stream for our industry. So we have, as you know, construction revenue, product revenue, service revenue. This is a new category. It's kind of like an energy service revenue stream, right? It's money that's locked in hot and cold air, and our offering allows our partners to monetize that. So if we took a look at that building that Andy mentioned, and if you look at your existing portfolio, your existing install base in your local area, and multiply that out, so if you have 100 buildings, each delivering X thousand dollars per month, that quickly gives us an idea of what the revenue potential is for your company as a BrainBox reseller. So I'll let you guys noodle on that, and we'll try to dive into some of these questions over here.
Oh, and you know what, Omar, real quick, that's a great point too. I forgot to mention, thanks for jumping in on that. I forgot to mention that the numbers we've been putting here on these screens, this is list price, MSRP of the software. Obviously, as a partner of ours, you will get a requisite discount depending on the number of square footage that you bring on to BrainBox. That number becomes a lot higher. So it scales up as you bring on additional square footage. But it starts at 20%. So we feel like that's also a really enticing way to get you guys involved. And like Omar was pointing out, the more buildings, the more square footage you bring on, the more profitable of a revenue stream this becomes for you guys.
Yeah, so thank you, Andy. Let me stop sharing here, and let's maybe dive into some of the questions. I'm going to open this up, and we'll tag team these if that's okay. So the first question, how many weeks of information will the algorithm need to build predictive capabilities? So it really depends on how large the building is, or how many data points, how many BMS points are coming from the building. So that correlates with the time needed to learn. For a small building, like a small box retail, 10,000 square feet, could be a couple of days. But for a large, 50-story office building with, let's say, 30, 40,000 points, then you're going to take 6 to 8 weeks on the longer end of the range. Question 2, what did the mechanical service provider say about why they were blaming BrainBox for a mechanical problem? I don't recall the exact issue, but it was something related to the functioning of one of the air handling units that's in the building. We had sent over the logs, so we're very transparent. Like we mentioned before, we have logs, we have a monitoring team, right, that monitors all this stuff. We sent over all this information to the customer for them to make their own decision. We let them kind of, again, make their own decision. And the good news is that it wasn't related to our operations. And when the customer saw the value that we bring, they by themselves made the decision to reconnect with us. And while we're on the topic, that's the only building that I'm aware of that has had this experience. Third
I can
question.
jump on the next one.
Yeah, go for it.
So are you able to share the slide deck? I think we might have covered that, but I mean, the answer is yes. So this deck and this whole presentation has been recorded, and we'll provide it, I think, as a YouTube link, something like that, Omar, right? To everyone that's registered?
Yeah, there's a recording link for everybody to view at their own leisure.
Next one, can previous trend data be implemented to improve BrainBox AI's time to maximize ROI? Omar, you want to take that one?
Sure, it's a good question. So if the sort of the database that's being, or trend data that's being described is comprehensive, so it covers kind of all of the needed data points in the BMS, then absolutely, it'll shrink the time that it will take for our AI to model that building. Essentially what the AI is doing during the learning period is it's building a baseline and learning on it at the same time. And if we had, let's say, for example, a year's worth of the same data, yes, it would make it a lot faster.
Okay, if we're an ISV partner with our own gateway to cloud connection, do you support accessing the building data from our public API?
So yes, we are, again, in need of the data in order to train the AI. And if it comes from a public API, et cetera, that's already ingested on the cloud, that actually makes our life easier because we don't need to have a site installation. The only thing we would need is to connect or to meet and discuss the format. So is it haystack? Or, what kind of exactly is the nomenclature of the points that are in the cloud? But absolutely, we've done that, by the way, with other vendors, other partners that already have the data in the cloud.
Yeah, and that kind of dovetails into maybe into the next question. Any pushback from BMS vendors, manufacturers to allowing you to communicate and control their BMS? And I can throw my own answer at that one, Omar.
Go for it.
Maybe you'll add more to it, but not really. I would say, and again, this actually is a good segue to the whole conversation here about being a partner and a reseller. Is we're really relying on you guys to get us in this door, and your relationship allows this not to be an issue. On the other hand, we're actually not writing at a high enough priority level. I think we write at priority 8. So we can be overridden. Omar didn't dig in that deep technically, but as we run through our control loop, and as Omar pointed out, it's every 5 minutes, the AI is asking the system if there are any, things they need to actually change or tweak or write to. That happens in a 5-minute cycle. So there's this read, write, and release methodology that we're doing. And we're also writing at a level that we can be overridden. And Omar, when the AI senses that it's been overridden back, what is it that we do?
Yeah, so we have multiple layers of kind of security and prioritization. So for example, if what Andy described happens, which is the AI is overridden, then the AI has an auto release feature for that zone or for that piece of equipment. Another feature is that in our cloud dashboard, our customers with the right level of access have the ability to put the AI into monitoring mode. So that's another option. And then last but not least is the ability, like Andy said, for higher priorities in the building to continue to do what building operators do, which is use their BMS UI in order to manage the building as they see fit. So think of BrainBox as an optimization layer that adds value to an existing and valuable BMS.
I'm looking at the next one, and I know there's a part 2 to it that I haven't found yet. So
that's okay. I read a little bit down.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at it. And so I just want to address, so that what the question is they're saying, I have heard this type of AI pitch a dozen times. I've personally tested a few products and services. What makes you different? Why are you the one, kind of thing, is the summary of the question. So first thing I want to say is I agree with you wholeheartedly that there's a lot of noise in the market about AI, machine learning, big data, analytics, this and that. I mean, it's honestly, it's overwhelming. I open my LinkedIn or any other type of forum to see kind of what's going on, and it jumps out of the page. And it's hard to your point, to determine who's doing what, where does the value lie, what does this actually mean in real terms, right? And this is why we kind of, we really are trying to share and be open as much as possible about what we do, because of this need to differentiate our offering. So I'll try to be sort of quick in the answer, and we'd be happy to dive into this in more detail with you on a dedicated call. But in short, we're using real AI. This is not a regression table in Excel. This is deep learning of the highest caliber. We have PhDs in artificial intelligence on our team that do this for a living. Number 2 is we're installed in over 20 million square feet across the world. There are buildings in Australia that are controlled by our cloud AI, and buildings of different sizes and types as we've discussed. So in terms of, is it real, is it not, I would point to our install base as proof in the pudding, and we can provide references if somebody's looking for that. And then last but not least, there are folks that are doing legitimate ML and AI type modeling, but that don't do a closed loop system, right? So they'll provide some analysis, and it's valuable analysis, and it's, you know, it is spot on, but somebody, usually a building operator or a contractor, needs to go ahead and implement it. What makes us unique is, again, closed loop. We're writing back to the BMS, and with all of those safeties and overrides that we mentioned just now, in order to make sure that the building manager or the contractor still have control. So that's the short version of the answer, but we'd be happy to dive into a kind of more detailed session with you.
Yeah, let me jump to, there's a few questions here from the same person. Is the 20% of SaaS fee to reseller? Essentially, it's, and we do have a pricing calculator that we can dig into when we start talking, you know, in person or, you know, virtually about the reseller program. We'll share the calculator with you, and it does compute a license cost. Whatever that cost is, the reseller initially starts at a 20% discount off of that as their price. And the same person asked, the example savings, is that whole building or HVAC only? It's a good question. It is whole building. We're seeing that empirically in the sites we've installed on. So, you know, obviously, savings ebb and flow depending on seasons, collar seasons, you know, things like that. But certainly as an aggregate, you know, average annually, we are seeing that up to 25% on a regular basis. And the savings, we do, third question from Keith there, are the savings KW, KWH, or both? We're essentially showing it on our dashboard with it's M&V based on IPMVP standards and verification. We're showing it in KWH and dollars. Anything you want to add to that, Omar? Or
no, that's spot on, and it's based on just a detail there in our dashboard. Our dashboard has the ability to ingest each building's utility bills directly from the utility. So basically the user, when they set up their dashboard, their BrainBox dashboard, they log in, and it'll ask them basically to log into their utility portal from our dashboard. And that gives us permission to go and fetch that data. And that's what we use in order to feed our M&V engine as a baseline.
Cool. Thank you, Omar. Okay, and I forgot about that. That's an important point to make. We are getting that historical utility data plus the real utility data as it happens. Okay, Richard, is the install of box or driver done by reseller or building management engineers? Good question. I mean, we have lots of different types of partners. We do have some ESCO partners. We've got some folks that their whole business is based around lighting retrofits, you know, but I'd say the majority of the partners that I've signed up so far are systems integrators, building controls firms, and you guys are very intimate with those buildings, so this install gets done by you. In the cases of some of those other partners, they may opt to have the local building engineer install the gateway, or hire, you know, a subcontractor to install, you know, the tritium driver, for example. But for the most part, I think we're talking about, we're interested in you guys being involved in this so that there's no, you know, additional layer of error, perhaps, in the install. Is that fair, Omar?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you can take the next one. Is the technology patented? If so, can you share that?
Happy to respond. So our technology is patent pending, and it's public information. Anybody's able to go and look it up in the US Patent Office database. And we also have international PCT type pending agreements or filings in different countries. Please reach out. I don't have the number memorized. Otherwise, I would tell you. It's easily findable online. If not, please reach out, and we'll be happy to provide it.
I can take the next one. Andy, this is Pete Siegel. Hey, Pete, how you doing? Great to see you on the call. It's been a while since we last talked. I'm glad you're still kicking around up there in the Pacific Northwest. I think I also saw Ted Phillips on the list, so hi to Ted if he's there. Looking forward to connecting with you guys. I think this would be a real plus as a tool for your organization. let's take the next one. Is there a way to get into sites without BACnet or Modbus? Omar?
Yeah, so there are multiple ways without BACnet and Modbus. So one way is using the Tritium Niagara AX or N4 drivers that we have. So those are native drivers. You just drop them. It's a jar file. You drop it into the Niagara instance, and away we go. Another method, like we mentioned, is that cloud-to-cloud connection. And then last but not least, we've done installations where it's been a gateway to BACnet. So some third-party protocol being converted to BACnet over IP, and then that BACnet over IP converted into our, brought into our cloud environment.
Okay, how do our algorithms differ from optimization programs that exist in the BMS system?
Good question, and it depends obviously on which optimization programs, existing ones we're talking about in the BMS, but it really revolves around a couple of core principles. So one is the predictive weather-based ability of the AI. So using deep learning again, and having trained on the weather data, having trained on the BMS data, the AI is now kind of trained, right? So what do? We give it the weather forecast for the next several hours for that building. That's the input. The output is the prediction of what the building is going to do over the next few hours. And that's the then information that can be used to optimize the building. So that's a major difference between being able to know what's coming versus a classical BMS, which is reacting to what already happened. So in a classical BMS, there's a sensor on the wall. It's connected as an input to the PID loop, and then you have a set point, and then an output, an actuator of some type. When the sensor picks up that it's hot in the room, it's already hot in the room, right? The thermal momentum is already there, and it's already pushing that temperature up. Whereas with BrainBox, we know 2 hours ahead of time what's going to happen. So we're able to preempt or basically prevent that type of outcome from occurring. And that requires less energy. Basically, it requires less energy to stay at set point than it does to escape the deadband and come back into the deadband. So if you look at a chart, if you graph, let's say, a space temperature curve of a zone that's controlled by BrainBox, you'll see it's very, very tight around the set point. Whereas classical BMSs, as we all know, they often hunt, right? They go up and down, above the set point, above the deadband, below the deadband, and that's kind of how, just historically, we as an industry have controlled equipment and spaces, and it works. You know, so this is all good. It's just that we've found a way to make it more efficient.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. I like the example of the car cruise control in a car, likened to the existing PID loop, reactive building system, and the autonomous car, meaning sensors that can see what's coming, predict what's coming, as being the difference between us and a lot of strategies that are in place today. I'm going to let you take the bandwidth question, if you don't mind. Sure. Omar. Bandwidth on the control system. Ever had a customer indicate that your system slows down the control system response to the front end?
Very good question. Again, lots of, clearly, I mean, folks that know this industry inside and out on the call, which is always fun, right? So I would say early on in our journey, yes, we had basically to tune our system so that when we connect to a type A system, this is the speed that it works at, type B, type C, and so on. I would say right now we have all of the tuning parameters that are needed in order to connect to, again, all of the major systems that we shared earlier. And it really comes down to understanding the different layers of a network, right? So if you have an MSTP network or Modbus, depending on the type of system and the vintage, you can be at different baud rates, and so those all impact what the aggregate polling rate can be. And so we've tuned our system so that it automatically understands what traffic it can handle as a BMS, and then just slide into that without disrupting kind of the GUI, without disrupting the communication between the nodes on the network.
All right. Oh gosh, I'm glad you're on the call, Omar, because these are all such technical questions. Are you supporting secure BACnet, and can you comply with various cybersecurity standards, example, UL, etc.?
This is a big topic. So there are a lot of components in what we do that are related to cybersecurity. As a company, we take it very, very seriously. So, and I'm going to walk through kind of the higher level picture, and then happy to dive into details on kind of a more dedicated call, maybe even a webinar about cybersecurity in the future could be appropriate. But basically, we have encryption throughout the stack. So from the cloud all the way down to the edge, we use, when kind of providing connectivity ourselves, we use a private cellular APN. We don't go over the internet. Data is encrypted in flight and at rest. We are also right now in the process of going for our SOC 2, SOC 2 certification. So for those that are familiar with that type of standard, that's what we're pursuing. It's kind of the highest standard, or one of them. Beyond that, we also have physical security related measures, both in terms of how we deal with our customers' data, where is it stored. We have to also consider the gateway if we're deploying a gateway. So there are lots of elements that are needed in order to supply or provide a secure offering to the market. So that's the kind of the short version. We'd be happy to dive into again a more detailed cybersecurity conversation on another call.
Okay, good. And yes, please reach out to us if you need to dig in further, guys. We're absolutely supportive of peeling back the layers there. How does the service work with solar or other alternative technologies?
To be honest, we haven't done any solar sort of integration, right? In order to understand, what that relationship could or should be between, what amount of energy is being produced, let's say on site by a solar system versus from the utility, and, making those decisions in conjunction with what we do. I think it's an interesting area to explore, though, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, please reach out to us. We actually have a few folks on staff that have worked in the solar industry, so probably be interesting for them to hear that as well. When BrainBox is done with a BAS retrofit, are the energy savings differentiated from what the BAS and traditional control strategies provide? I think there's maybe two questions in there, Omar.
Yeah. So the best way to look at this is according to our MNV, measurement verification protocol. So we have a published protocol, happy to share it with whoever's interested, that is based on the IPMVP and ASHRAE 14 standards. It's actually, we hired two of the authors of those standards to write our own methodology. That's how seriously we take this topic. And so there are essentially two methods that we use. And again, we can dive into details on another call, but the first method is the whole building method. So we compare the building's behavior before and after BrainBox in a weather normalized way and according to certain statistical hygiene requirements that we have. The other option is a sub-metering or virtual metering approach that measures, again, the specific equipment behavior before and after BrainBox is deployed. And in that sense, both of those should show, all things being equal, what value BrainBox is bringing to the table. If there are significant retrofits, let's say there's a lighting retrofit during our service to a building, then we would need to know about that in order to adjust our baseline. Those are the non-routine events.
Okay, hopefully that's good for you guys. Is BrainBox solution, does it conform to ASHRAE 36?
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say the ASHRAE guideline 14 is the one that we were talking about. in terms of IP MVP. But for ASHRAE, in terms of the ASHRAE 36, I'd have to take a look at the specific standard in order to get back to you.
Yeah, and I think, Omar, is my recollection is that it's just sort of, ASHRAE 36 talks a lot about some of the things we're doing, but we're doing them in using AI and in an autonomous way. So it's like a higher level set of functionality to deal with diagnostics and, you know, tighter sequences and things like that. So I don't know if conform is the right word there, but I know that our philosophies are the same, except we're probably approaching it differently. So if you guys have gotten the message so far, the AI has its, you know, its marching orders, and it just does them and continues to do them. Whereas, you know, typical building systems, whether you're adhering to, you know, different ASHRAE standards, you guys are physically programming the logic into the system to adhere to to conform to those standards. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just these are two different approaches to the same problem, and I think they probably fit in the same ecosystem. Let me take the next one here. What is the impact on equipment lifespan if you tighten the deadband using BrainBox AI? If fans, compressors are constantly turning on and off, this can diminish the lifespan. It's an interesting question, Rick, because we've actually been talking about this recently, Omar and I and team. We actually believe it's a very positive impact on asset and equipment lifespan. I'm going to let Omar give his spin on it, but I think the reality is it may be the opposite of what you're thinking in your statement there, Rick.
Yeah, so Rick, what you just asked was the first question out of my mouth when I first started working at BrainBox. Because to your point, if we're constantly, you know, moving actuators and turning motors on and off, et cetera, yes, it would shorten the lifespan. But it turns out it's exactly the opposite. So it actually is a double benefit. We're using the equipment much less of the time because of that predictive ability. And there's a lot of coasting that's going on. So if you think of, again, the example that Andy gave related to cruise control in a car, it's that accelerate, decelerate that we do with our feet on the pedals that causes a lot of the wear and tear. But the sort of cruise control constant speed is basically where we don't have to do much in order to maintain the speed. So to translate that to HVAC terms, we actually see major, like talking sometimes north of 80% reduction in the time that the fan motor is on, that the cooling stage is enabled. So there's some pretty significant data there. That being said, we're not ready to come out and say, oh, we're going to shorten the lifespan, or sorry, extend the lifespan of your equipment by X%, because we're still studying that. But the initial data is along the lines of what I described. There's some material reduction in runtime.
Yeah, actually, less stress too, right, on the equipment, because
absolutely,
you're not taking it from 0 to, you know, 2 or 3 stages of whatever, right? I mean,
that's right.
Because of the predictive nature of it, we're taking it little bits and pieces at a time to where it needs to get to, because we're able to see that ahead of time.
Yep.
It looks like there's one last one. Omar, I can grab this. What costs to enable? Yep. There's a gateway to install, BMS to interact with, and no programming that may bump into. I saw $0 from BrainBox. Is Reseller expected to also charge $0 for their time to install? The quick answer is no. You know, this is our engagement program. As we talk through the, you know, you becoming a reseller and a partner, we'll talk through these examples, and you are completely in your rights to add whatever labor pieces you need to add to the equation here. We just want BrainBox to be kind of a no-brainer, pardon the pun, so that it's easy for your clients to try this out, get some savings in their pockets, and then decide whether this is the right tool for them. But in that exercise of the initial engagement, 2 months, you know, certainly that's $0 for both of us as, you know, partners together in this endeavor, right? We both got skin in the game there, and that's important. After that requisite 2 months of savings, and we start invoicing you, and essentially you start invoicing your clients, you're entitled to add whatever pieces of install, labor, et cetera, that you need to add on top of that, you know, to cover your costs. I think, was there any more? Oh, there was another one. So one more just popped in. Good for us. How does BrainBox control/affect the installation? By changing set points, taking control of DDC outputs? I'll let you take that one, Omar.
Man, this is a really good crowd.
Yeah.
I'm liking it. So it's the latter. It's taking care or taking control of the DDC outputs, so we don't impact comfort set points. So temperature set points, for example, we don't make folks hotter or colder in order to improve energy efficiency. What we do is we write to the output, so fan command, cooling stage, etc. In terms of other kind of non-space temperature set points, it's possible. So depending on, let's say, if it's a hot water system, or chilled water system, the chilled water supply and return set points, those kinds of things we will write to. But just wanted to clarify on the comfort side, we never change that. In fact, we improve it like we discussed earlier.
Awesome. Well, we have gone over our time, which is great. Actually, that means that we're getting the message out there and you're receiving it well. And we appreciate that. We very much appreciate your time today. Omar, if you want to add a closing.
No, again, thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. It's always fun interacting with folks that really have a deep knowledge of the build space and of the market. Feel free to reach out. Our contact information is on the slides. Hopefully, you caught that, and we'll email out a link to this video after the call.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.